Hi, everyone, and welcome to our first live webinar at the Social Entrepreneurship for Innovation in Health course. As you're aware, this course is part of Making More Health initiative, which is a partnership between Ashoka and Barger Ingelheim. We'll take a brief pause for everybody to join the session. I'm sure all of you are already waiting for the session. We're delayed by 5 minutes. Sorry for that. There were some tech errors. Meanwhile, if you see your peers not being able to see the live screen, I suggest you request them to refresh their browsers. You can do that by dropping a comment in the discussion forum. And for those of you who are watching us live, please don't forget to take the short survey that appears just below the screen. There is a question that asks you, are you watching live? Please click yes to get your extra credit points. These points are rewarded for attending live webinars. If you're watching a recorded session, this survey will not appear. Okay, then let's get started with the season's first live webinar. As I said, this course is part of Making More Health initiative, which explores innovative pathways to improve access to healthcare for people, animal, and communities around the world. This course gets all the participants to connect with global community of health professionals across private, public, and nonprofit sector and convene entrepreneurial strategies for creating social and business impact in the health and wellness space. My name is Indrani Sharma. I'm your course co-facilitator. We are hosting the 23rd edition of this course, and we are very excited to share that over 4,000 participants have benefited from the course since 2015. We've also hosted 6th edition of Making More Health Together Global Convention that is hosted during later part of the year. The convention brings together over 1,000 attendees who come together with the goal of achieving sustainable solutions for most pressing social challenges. So do watch out for the dates for the convention for this year by following us on LinkedIn. And now, please join me to welcome Florencia Estrade, who is the co-founder of League of Entrepreneurs, which is an international community of impact-driven innovators inside some of the most influential private and public institutions. Florencia, welcome to today's session.
Thank you so much, Indrani. A pleasure to be here again. And I love whenever I hear it's one more edition, one more edition. So it's a proof of the amazing work that you are doing and how this is bringing a community together.
Sure, this is the 23rd edition, and we are so happy that you've joined us one more time. You have been speaking with, in our webinars quite regularly. Florencia, before we get started with our conversation, please allow me a moment to read out a brief bio of you. Florencia is a social entrepreneur, a strategist, and an experienced facilitator in coaching groups throughout their transformational journeys across the world. She spent over a decade inside large corporations in Latin America and US in organizations like ABN AMRO Bank and McKinsey & Company, and founded social enterprises in Brazil. She holds an MBA from UC Berkeley. She has been a Fulbright scholar and a Hasp Merit scholar. And Florencia is passionate about people finding meaning at work and collective leadership. So it's a real pleasure for us, Florencia, to host you one more time. Thank you for taking the time today.
Thank you, my pleasure.
So, Florencia, before we start our conversation and dive into the concepts and aspects of entrepreneurship, we'd like to know a little bit more about you. Can you tell us a little bit about your professional journey and the story of founding League of Entrepreneurs?
Sure. So first of all, I'm calling in from Uruguay, South America, where I live. This is my home. I have two beautiful daughters, and live close to nature. So just for you to get a sense of who I am, because when you were sharing the bio, I was thinking I started my career working a lot in large corporations, which meant very early on learning structures, corporate business language, all of that, which actually informs a lot of the way that I think and have learned to develop my thinking. However, when I was already in my late 20s, I was questioning a lot around the way business was done. And I was just like, why is this so dismantled? Like, we talk about money here, but then all this other social stuff. At that time, it was more social stuff, not as much environmental conversations, at least in my context. But it was very fragmented. And for me, it was not until in the MBA I had a wonderful course by a professor on social enterprises that it
Mm-hmm.
was just a moment of integrating it in a clear and coherent way. Just when we talk about doing business, we can do business with positive social and environmental impact. It's just a matter of creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and that has informed my last 20 years in my work since then, more like 24, looking on ways that we can make that happen. So I moved to the other end, became an entrepreneur, put together an innovation consultancy and an accelerator for startups in Brazil. And this was very interesting because it was, on the one end, working with large corporations or large organizations, some of them were public institutions, just how do you think of how to bring impact? And how do you create strategies to make that happen?
Mm-hmm.
And then it was mostly consulting projects with an amazing team. On the other hand, entrepreneurs. Shiny eyes, I have an idea, I want to make it happen. I don't have many resources, and we would just invest and train them. But all of a sudden, the realization was first, the entrepreneurs wanted connections and contacts in the large institutions in order for their businesses to thrive or to grow. And then when I looked at the clients that we had in the consultancy, I was just like, they need someone with shiny eyes, like the entrepreneurs, but inside of the organizations. So that was when, when a light, you realize, okay, so who are the people
Mm-hmm.
with the shiny eyes inside the established organizations with the drive, with the capacity, with the commitment to make this happen and change from within? So that is the concept behind entrepreneurship. And that is how we ended up creating with other people the League of Entrepreneurs, which actually was born in a competition with Ashoka, starting to find who thinks you're an entrepreneur. And at that time, it was like, what are you talking about? So this
Mm-hmm.
was in 2012. So we
Mm.
are, but yeah, so that's a journey. Uh, so today we have the League of Entrepreneurs, and I can share more if you want, or let me know how you want to guide it. But yeah, that's where we have established this community and the learning and the practice and the field together with so many others. I'm happy to say today, if you put entrepreneur on your Google search, you're going to find a lot of people talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. That's a fascinating journey, I should say, that you started with something out of the college. It's very normal when you're out of the college, people actually ask you who you are working for. And you would want to take a big name. You would want to say that I work with a big corporation. But the realization only comes after maybe a few years when you start questioning the purpose. So I'm sure that has been the journey. So thank you. Thank you for setting that context. And I'm sure our learners will also know the relevance of your work and all the wisdom that you are going to bring in now, kind of unveiling the different aspects of entrepreneurship. So now you said, like, how did you found League of Entrepreneurs? So tell us, like, because some of us who are coming from the health space, this concept of entrepreneurship is very new. So how can you define it, like, very simply? What is social entrepreneurship and how is it different from social entrepreneurship?
So, first and foremost, even if you take out the word social and
Mhm.
you just talk intrapreneurship and entrepreneurship, the
Mhm.
big difference is whether you're doing it from inside an existing organization or you're just starting a new organization.
Mhm.
So, let's put it very bluntly like, okay, I want to change the way health is done and how, okay, I can start a new business and have my own clinic, like my own space to have my patients. Then that's entrepreneurship. Now
Mhm.
you can say, no, no, no. Actually, I want to change the way public hospitals serve people.
Mhm.
Then you're wanting to do it from inside the
Mhm.
public hospital system. Or you
Hmm.
can say, no, I'm working in an organization, a private hospital, but I want to do it from in there. You're an entrepreneur as well. So when you're doing it from inside, it's different than when you're starting a new organization.
Hmm.
When we bring the word social, well, we're just saying it's things that we start with a positive impact, social impact, to solve a social problem. When it
Hmm.
comes to health, I guess it's tricky because in the end, just the industry on its own, just solving health issues is a social problem. I
Hmm.
would rather say it depends on the way you run the business and the way you do it, whether it's a social business, because the purpose on its own is good. Let's bring new good health for people.
Yeah.
But then if you're making tons of money out
Hmm.
of giving help to people, then it's a little questionable. So then when we talk about social entrepreneurship or social entrepreneurship in
Hmm.
the health realm, I would say for sure the purpose is to solve health issues and health problems. Now there's a question on what is the level of profit, of inclusivity, of accessibility uh, in your business model to reach that audience.
Hmm. That's a very clear distinction between the two. I'm going to remember entrepreneur means inside. So we also say it IN, which is inside. And
Right.
entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship is like more entering, so like collaboration. So it's entrepreneurship. So I'm going to remember it like that. So yeah, that was, thank you for making that very clear distinction. And yes, health is a space, which by I think flavor is something which gives you the kind of that you are serving somebody, you are giving a service. How you do that and what does profit mean to you certainly is something that is going to define the social aspect of it. So thank you for sharing that. um, I will say that let's build on to this and talk about why does it matter to organizations, uh, why entrepreneurship matters to organizations. So what is a strong business case for organizations to invest in social entrepreneurship?
Well, when you look from the point of view of the organization, if you think like there are some agendas that are common for organizations, which is innovation. That's the most pressing one today. Are
Mm,
you innovating at the speed that the market requires? And
mm,
even more today, when you have artificial intelligence, like all these, like, and then all these unstable markets, and then you see like little ones that are starting startups and growing very
yeah,
fast. So
yeah.
there's a big concern around the speed of innovation inside organizations. Then, together with these, when it comes more on the end of social integrity, it's like, are you doing things with good relationships with your stakeholders, your customers, in a way that your business or your organization is respectful? So there's a question around your identity, your brand, your relationship with stakeholders that has, you can call it sustainability or corporate social responsibility, but more and more, you don't need to separate it anymore. The
Mm,
good thing is now it's more integrated in like, are you an organization and a brand that can be respected?
mm,
Um, and then there is the question around talent. So, as an
mm,
organization, you don't want to lose the
mm,
people that are good and that can help you grow and sustain your business or your cause if you're not a business and you're a public organization or an NGO. But then the question for me, entrepreneurship is in the middle of that
mm,
because let your people that are passionate and that have ideas and that
mm,
want to make a change
mm,
develop something from within your organization before they leave. Because if not, you're going to lose these people. And
mm,
let your people that are inside your organization that maybe you haven't realized, you don't have a department for innovation. You have to believe that your employees can come up with ideas. So
mm,
allow for some time for employees to develop creative ideas and capacity for new business lines, business products, new services. So I think like we need to bring it to that conversation. HR,
mm,
innovation,
mm.
and just pure strategy. Like your strategy in order to grow and to develop
Yeah.
yourself.
I completely agree. I mean, if bigger organizations have to look at sustainability, then innovation has to be a part of that. And innovation can come from within, not always from looking outside. So I have a follow-up question, but before that, just because you also spoke about corporate social responsibility, I will just want to ask you that how is social entrepreneurship different from corporate social responsibility?
Well, corporate social responsibility, or in some cases they call it sustainability and not anymore, but usually you would have some people assigned many times to take care of that, and a big part of the work is looking at the current existing business and just
Mm-hmm.
making sure that it's being run in a responsible way. And that
Mm-hmm.
has to do with what is your relationship with the environment, what is your relationship with the stakeholders, and you can even do a materiality matrix. So basically, you look at what are the key issues that because of your sort of business, you may have some tensions. So let's say if you're a mining company, they
Mm-hmm.
have lots of tensions in extracting minerals in a certain area that you're going to affect a lot. In the case of health, you can take a look in terms of how are you working with your suppliers, how are you working with your customers, how much are you having a transparent um,
Mm-hmm.
value chain, but it's a lot more looking into your current thing
Mm-hmm.
um, with a very responsible lens. And many part of it is very technical as well, in terms of environmental emissions, like CO2 emissions. Like there's a big part of it which is more
Yes.
technical.
Yeah.
Your governance is your
Mm-hmm.
governance in a way. So it's much more like that. When we talk of social entrepreneurship, it's more in looking at opportunities from your existing organization. So, based, I like to think of it like imagine the organization where you're working is a platform, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like it has connections, it has a brand, it has employees, it has a distribution system, it has all of these. And then looking at all of those assets with a with creativity and thinking, how can we leverage all of these in a new way to solve social problems? So usually it would end up being something new. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't necessarily need to be a new business line. It
Mm-hmm.
can be an improvement or an add on existing things. So, for instance, just to make it very clear, we work in the league, we have lots of people with Philips, right? Philips works with diagnostics in the health industry. And for instance, they already have a big machine, which is the MRI, right? The MRI already exists. They would sell it to hospitals. They would sell it to private. Okay. Now the question was, how do we make MRI accessible to
Mm-hmm.
those to hospitals that cannot buy it or to people that actually because of the way they never go and do any diagnostic, like they don't regularly go to a hospital or to a clinic or so the question was how do we bring it closer and cheaper to those that are not accessing it today. So they are not being diagnosed. What was the innovation? And actually, it came not from one person. It came from a couple of them starting to talk, and then three and four. Let's put the MRI on a truck, and they call it the Blue Seal. And then let's see who can receive the truck and how do we bring people to do the MRIs. So they take it to events. So it's like the firemen, it's like the people, the mining workers. But the question, if you think of it, it was not a product innovation. It was not like R&D involved, you know? It was just like the model of distribution changed. How do we price it? How do we make it reach? And where are places that people actually don't go because of health, but go because of other reasons where we can embed a diagnostic.
Yeah. Great example. Thank you, Florencia. And now, actually, coming back to my follow-up question, though, I would say that, when you're looking at CSR and social entrepreneurship, one thing is that you have a lot of compliance associated with CSR, whereas entrepreneurship is still open-ended. And I think that is how it should be, because that's where innovation can grow. So having said that, many organizations aspire to innovate, but they struggle when they are executing. So, what are some of the most effective ways in which leaders can create an environment for entrepreneurs to thrive without disrupting core operations?
Well, I assume here in the audience, here there's lots of people wanting to do this type of work.
Mhm.
And then what are the three things that come all the time? It's time. Well, actually, my current position is I do other stuff, but I have this other idea that I would love to develop,
Mhm.
but I'm doing this in my extra time or
Mhm.
in a small percentage of my time. So that's the first time as an organization. How do we liberate time so that people can dedicate to a seed, to an idea? Second, risk.
Mhm.
Established organizations are risk averse.
Mhm.
So it's very different, the level of appetite for risk that you have in an organization that's established and well functioning and wants to operate efficiently.
Mhm.
So the second one is risk. So then that's a question as an organization is where are you allowing for some risk inside? So if you're just asking people to perform on targets and to make sure at the end of the year in the performance review it's just did you reach your targets, then that's a problem because did you try something new that didn't work? So then there's a cultural issue around aversion to risk. So if you want to embed entrepreneurship in your organization, you need to leave some time for people to work on new things. You need to evaluate people differently based on allowing for some risk taking and trying new things. And
Mhm.
then money, and then
Mhm.
money. Because then there's not that much that you can do just with the operating capital, like the normal money
Mhm.
that you use to run your business. You need to separate some money to allocate for these new ideas. Just as if you would do it with a small new business, these are small new endeavors. They are not new organizations, but they are new projects. So I think organizationally, when you look at organizations that are doing it, is
Mhm.
you allow for some type of structured programs where people can bring new ideas and just be accepted and dedicate some time. So an internal accelerator, or
Mhm.
you allow within the existing operation, you just make sure that people know, like in the different areas, that there's a portion of the time and money that is
Mhm.
allocated, like Google, typical Google
Yeah.
case that for years has been. But so I think like
Mhm.
that's an important piece. And also if you are an entrepreneur and you are having this idea,
Mhm.
sometimes you're not sitting in the right place.
Mhm.
And that is very important to look at because maybe you are having an amazing connection and like you, this is what you would like to do. And just also you have to be have self-awareness. Like,
Mhm.
am I sitting in the right place for this to happen? Because it also requires looking at what is the right house within the bigger house,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And let me explain it this way. If you are in a factory and you are working to deliver and just your work is 8 to 5 factory, 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 trying to build something new within that type of work is very
Mhm.
difficult unless
Mhm.
there is some the same thing in sales if you're
Mhm.
like all the time on the street selling. So there's something about where can you have some time with which is not as operational, and
Mhm.
that's where this accelerator programs or innovation programs
Mm.
inside organizations are very interesting because they
Mm.
can allow people that have this type of work to
Yeah.
be taken for some time
Yeah.
away to just do something different.
Completely agree. So, time, resource, and also leaving that space for innovation with some appetite for risk taking. Beautifully explained. Thank you. Thank you, Florencia. Florencia, I'd like to also tell you that there are almost 70 people watching us live currently, and we do have some questions coming from our learners also. But before we go there, we just spoke about how organizations should look at entrepreneurship. Now, coming to individuals, how do you become an entrepreneur? Like, how do you become, like, what should you do to become an entrepreneur? What are the skills? Uh, what are the process? How
Yeah.
do you become?
No, and it's funny because we started talking about the difference between entrepreneur and intrapreneur. And
Mm.
maybe that's a good place where to start, which
Mm.
is in essence, there are some things that are common traits. It doesn't matter if you're entrepreneur or intrapreneur. And I like to start first with the shiny eyes, which you
Mhm.
might laugh, but I think that's very important
Mm.
because there's something that is driving your fire and your passion, and you
Mm.
want to make it happen. And that's fundamental because you're willing to take no's, you know? You're willing to take no's because you believe that there's something that can be done. So
Mm.
that drive, that gut, that it's fundamental.
Mm.
So try to find the thing that makes you feel that way. That's where you will be able to unlock your entrepreneurial capacity. Then it's a matter of seeing things that others may not see, and you need to convince others. And that
Mm.
happens for entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs. The fact that you are noticing something or see potential for something doesn't mean that others do.
Mm.
So that requires that you have to become a very good storyteller, a very good empathic listener, because it's not all the time about selling your idea, but rather coming and saying, listen, I think there's potential in this, but I
Mm.
would love to get your perspective.
Mm.
Don't be arrogant. Like, listen to what others have to say. So, good entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs have a sense of potential, have a sense of something you want to make happen, and you're smart and humble and listen, because then people will give you a lot and will become your partners on the
Mm.
journey. Now, what is a big difference between entrepreneur and intrapreneur? When you're an entrepreneur, you have the world to convince.
Mm.
You can talk with people around. When you're an entrepreneur, you're sitting in your place in the organization. And if your boss or your some people that are fundamental uh,
Mm.
don't say yes, then your idea won't move.
Mm.
So that is where it's very important as an entrepreneur to be very clear around who are the people that you need to influence and move. So, who are your key stakeholders? Some of them may be your sponsors. So, they can be your godmother, your godfather, your like people that are going to support you. But some can be against your idea, feel threatened by it. So,
Mm.
it's important, as much as it's important, the clarity on your idea, what you want to make happen, doing a good presentation,
Mm.
creating a business model for it. That
Mm.
is important. It's very important that you learn to read the politics and the influence map in your organization. So, shiny eyes, find something that moves you. Second, make that idea become something concrete that can happen from your organization. So that is more like the business modeling.
Mm.
And make a map of the people that you need to influence and become a good storyteller and empathic listener.
Beautiful. Actually, I was about to ask you what are some 2 or 3 practical steps that I want to take. Like, if I have decided and I think I am an entrepreneur, then what are the next steps that I'll take? So you've already given me in your answer, you've already answered that, okay, find what you want to solve, find the people who can walk with you in the journey, and also find a way to create a concept that probably you're able to pitch. So I think that's great. You've already answered. Anything else that you think as a
Maybe
next
a
step?
couple of thoughts, because sometimes it can be a little bit daunting to be like, oh my God, I don't know what is that passion and idea that I have. And
Mm,
listening to the stories of entrepreneurs,
mm,
uh, I think many times it falls on your lap. Like
mm.
it's not like you were always thinking about this.
Yeah.
So it's like sometimes it's like there is an opportunity. I like to think that find for windows of opportunity
Mm,
where you can exercise your entrepreneurship.
mm,
Because sometimes it feels like, then that is my dream moment where I'm gonna have like what I'm passionate about and whatever. And then, like, I always like to think of there's a story in Peru, Maria Fernanda, that she started working in a fish company, okay, a company that just uh, sells fish. And she started in the commercial and sustainability department in the beginning of her career.
mm,
Very curious, like that. And then in one of those uh, campaigns that they had, like sustainability and communication campaign, she realized there was a truck that took fish
mm,
into the middle areas of Peru, which
mm,
are where you have the biggest problems in terms of poverty levels and in terms of
mm.
nutrition levels. So
Oh,
the fish was donated.
oh, okay.
Okay, so it was donated. It was just like
Mm,
more like
mm,
exceed of fish that they would take and donate, but it
mm,
would only go 2 to 4 times a month. And she
mm,
just looked at that and she was just like, why can't we go more often? Because we
mm,
can't donate more. That's not a
mm,
business, and these people don't buy the fish.
mm,
And then she was just curious, curiosity. That's a
mm,
big, important part of entrepreneurship. And she was just like, but would there be a way to take fish every day if people would buy it instead of we donate it? And then
mm,
they were like, yeah, but we don't have a business model. Well, long story short, from that curiosity, she was never passionate about fish being taken into, but she was just curious
mm,
of why are we just doing this as a donation, which was a corporate social responsibility activity.
mm,
And she was like, can we transform this that is done as a donation
mm.
into a business line? And they did it. It
Oh,
required generating a new distribution system because there was no distribution to those areas. It
mm,
required getting investment from the development bank, Inter-American Development Bank, from government because they recognized that it was
mm,
important for nutrition, that
mm,
these people would get fish. They had to develop fairs in order to convince people on how to cook fish because people didn't eat it because they didn't know how to either.
mm,
So it required a systemic perspective and it
mm,
required moving the company, moving government, moving development banks, building a new company that would distribute the fish. So I think another piece maybe they're usually not easy problems to solve.
mm,
So be patient as an entrepreneur
mm,
because it's not like uh, but yeah, just look, maybe just an idea. Look at your current moment. Look where you are sitting. And
mm,
where do you see a crack, a window of opportunity
mm,
that you can try? Something that you can try. Don't wait for the big thing to come. Just
mm.
start with something.
Completely understand that. Curiosity is actually, I think, the spark that can lead you to investigate to see if there is something that you can build on. And of course, listening is a great skill to have. So, Thank you for explaining that. And I think we've covered some good fundamentals of entrepreneurship, both from the organization side and from the individual side. Now, moving forward, I would want to look at some real world examples from you to understand how entrepreneurship works in practice. So, can you share with us some examples of new products or services that you've worked on as a result of entrepreneurship and what it made it successful? And what can we learn about implementation and follow through?
Well, I think this last one I just said is exactly a real case example,
Uh,
and just maybe to reflect on it again a little bit, just
hmm.
because um, just for you to understand what did it require, because it became a new
Yes,
line of
yes,
business, a new line of
yes,
business for the company, bringing
yes.
about 10% of revenues for it. But just
Hmm.
what did it require? Because I think it's important to take a look.
Yes, yes.
You require mobilizing different areas in the organization. So, in order to go from a track that donates into a new line of business, it requires someone needs to structure the business model. So,
Hmm.
what would be the total consumption in these areas? How many people live? How many would we need to invest? So, there's a
Hmm.
piece of shaping what is the minimum to start with a trial of the business, and
Hmm.
then come who is going to invest on it.
Hmm.
And then what's very interesting in the case of entrepreneurs,
Hmm.
many times it's a social entrepreneurship, there's a limit to what the company is willing to invest. And there
Hmm.
may be other interested players that can
Hmm.
invest. So that's one thing that's very important. Once you have built that idea and that minimum business trial, like how you're going to try it, then if it's small, you're going to try for money inside. But if you require more, uh, you can look for partners outside. And actually, in my experience, the more that you engage partners from outside,
Hmm.
the more resilient your project will be.
Hmm.
So, again, going into Philips, for instance, for
Hmm.
another case, you know the ultrasound for
Hmm.
mothers that are pregnant.
Yeah.
Okay, they have been investing in diagnosis, ultrasound diagnostics for many years. They
Yes.
already had a solution that
Hmm.
was very portable and was cheaper. But the question is always still how to read the ultrasound.
Hmm.
Because the problem is not only having the hardware, but also the software to analyze it and the
Hmm.
people to analyze it. So there
Hmm.
was a question on how can you work with artificial intelligence in order to make that visualization and interpretation of the pregnancy ultrasound easier. So
Hmm.
they are working on it right now. And this came out of, again, funding of Gates Foundation together
Hmm.
with Philips to develop this first prototype.
Hmm.
So I think when it comes into what are the ways of making this happen,
Hmm.
um, usually it's okay. First, you need to find something that is a social problem and also can be a market.
Okay.
Okay, it has to be a market, like
Hmm.
something that people would do or buy, or and sometimes it's important in the case of health,
Hmm.
especially. It's not the end consumer who's going to buy it,
Yeah.
but it would be governments in the case of public health, or it would
Hmm.
be other small organizations, smaller private organizations. So, who would be those intermediaries that
Hmm.
could buy these?
Hmm.
And then there's a lot around who's going to invest in this solution. So I think like this, I like the case of Fernanda because usually people think of entrepreneurship as, oh, I'm gonna do something super innovative,
Hmm.
super different. And the case of Fernanda was just selling fish
Yeah.
to people that wouldn't have access to it.
Yeah.
But actually, the reason this wasn't reaching that
Hmm.
is because you didn't have the distribution system and the
Hmm.
business model system. So don't fool yourselves on just finding new products and new services that are super innovative. Sometimes just look at the existing products and services and just ask yourselves, are these services being accessible,
Mm,
affordable, and reaching all the people that they could be reaching and solving for? And then that is a very interesting realm in
mm,
terms of health innovation, how to make accessibility to
mm,
those that are not having it. And from my humble perspective in health, I'm not an expert, but I think that is one of the biggest problems we have today. We have
mm.
enough ways to solve our health issues. The problem is that only a small portion of the population accesses a lot of
Access.
the,
Mm.
yeah, so health access, such a big issue.
Indeed, indeed. Even in the developed world, access is the issue. It's not the innovation. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Florencia.
Actually,
These.
sorry, Inrani, another perspective for health and entrepreneurship that you reminded me when you said one of the entrepreneurs in the league, he's a doctor that lives in the US and works in
Mhm,
Harvard hospitals. And like, you know what they are working on, which is very interesting, is just inclusivity, because
mm,
all the services have been developed without the thinking of immigrants and all the Hispanic uh,
mm,
group has been growing. And then when they go back into the way all the processes have been
mhm,
done, they are not taking into consideration people
mm,
that speak Spanish, people that. So there's also a layer in terms of looking at the processes and
mm,
thinking, are they accessible?
mm,
Really? Not
mm,
in terms of transaction costs and how much they are going to pay. Are they really accessible in terms
mm.
that people can understand, feel served, feel heard? Yeah, so that's another very interesting space.
Great, great. These are like incredible examples with great insights and definitely helps us to put some context to some of the concepts that our learners are learning at the moment, how that happens in practice. Florence, I have a very interesting question coming from one of our live audience, actually two of them, um, Omosola and Camilla, and they are asking, as a newcomer to social entrepreneurship, what practical steps can I take to gain buy-in, build alliance, and influence decision without formal authority?
Without formal what?
Authority.
Well, I always like to say, like, okay, you are here and you want to bring people along with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, first, seriously, sit on your table and make a map of your stakeholders. And
Mm-hmm.
I would say, do it in the following way: put influence and power in your organization, and on the other one, just put what is the level of interest they have on what you want to talk about with them. So you know that they are very excited about all these social conversations. Wonderful. Oh, you know that what you're bringing is very close to their area, so
Mm-hmm.
that they are in there. You can solve a pain point that they have in their area. Okay, so if you have people with high influence and high connection with your topic, those are your first movers that you want to convince together with you. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
bring those allies. Then, those, and again, try to find who are going to be your sponsors. That's fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you have that, this is not your idea anymore. This is other people that are with you working together.
Yeah.
Now, other important next steps to get buy in. I think you need to dedicate time to
Mm-hmm.
make sure you understand how your endeavor connects with the corporate strategy, with the business strategy. So look, because sometimes it's like, of course I work with this organization. Well, but just go into seriously read the sustainability reports, read the strategic reports of your
mm,
organization at the highest level possible. Don't fall on the trap of reading your areas or your piece of the organization.
mm,
Look at the big organization and just look at how does this idea connect with what the organization is trying to reach.
yeah.
Because then use the same language.
Mm,
Don't come with new words. If you
mm,
want buying, if you want people to listen to you need to learn the buzzwords of
mm,
the what's going on in your organization today.
mm.
And you need to talk in that language and just mention that. And this idea that I'm bringing would add value to this strategy
Yeah.
that's happening,
Mm,
this thing that's happening. So translate your language. Learn to
mm,
speak the language of others and not yours.
mm,
Um, and then what else? I think, and then also, sometimes we forget, and it's important, just all those people that may not have all the influence,
mm,
but do have the spirit and the passion that you might have as well.
mm,
Build a community of allies. Don't do this
mm,
as a lone ranger. And just
mm.
bring others and make the journey fun.
Yeah.
Make the journey, because one big mistake,
Mm,
your project and your initiative can never have your name. That's a
mm,
mistake.
mm,
Okay? If people talk, this is Floor's project. Let's go and collaborate with Floor. Then I'm doing the wrong job.
mm, mm, mm,
Right? This has to be part of a group, of a collective.
mm,
And I love to say the best entrepreneurial initiatives,
mhm,
people don't know who started them.
mm, mm,
So even if I tell you this one of the fish company, no one will say Fernanda started it.
mm.
I've been to the company first. Fernanda left after years, but the company continues with that. And no one
Mm,
remembers who started it.
mm. Beautiful. I think that was really nice. Like, you have to build a community inside to make sure that the work that you're doing has the language that the organization is going to buy into naturally, because it's part of the strategy, it's part of it's part of sustainability. So yes, thank you, Florencia. I think you've very generously kind of shared from your experiences and lessons and insights, and they have certainly deepened our understanding of entrepreneurship, how it looks in practice. Looking ahead, what do you think are some of the exciting trends in social entrepreneurship, especially at intersection of health, technology, and climate?
Well, I think I assume you are all looking into, because I think like all the technological advances are crazy in terms of the speed into which they are going, um, and how they are bringing down transaction costs in terms of how expensive it is to get a diagnostic, to get I don't know, like even a consultation on a health problem or a, so I think there's something very unique in the intersection of technology and humanity in the
Hmm,
case of health. Um,
hmm,
because there's something on how can technology assist much more uh, our distribution models, distribution channels, capacity on diagnostics, but don't lose the human component. And that intersection feels like something very interesting in the coming years.
mhm,
Um, Another piece that I have been talking a lot and I'm intrigued is with all the extension of our life, which is all this longevity happening.
hmm,
There feels like a whole new thing in terms of uh, well being in longevity, in terms of, and it's interesting because when it comes to health, I always
mhm,
like to think in that wider perspective of health, it's so much far beyond pharmacies or hospitals or all of that. It's like housing, it's
hmm,
like people that can accompany you. So there's something there in terms of a big market
Mm-hmm.
still to be tackled, and even more when it comes to people with less financial resources, with longer lives. Uh, so that feels like a very interesting space. When
Mm-hmm.
it comes to intersection with climate, actually
Mm-hmm.
talking some years ago, like there are some people, some entrepreneurs at AMREF in Africa that are working very much in health. And for me, it was a big discovery like 4 years ago that we were talking about like how climate and health come together more and more strongly in their agendas in the coming years, considering all the, well, for sure, all the disasters that we're going to live,
Mm-hmm.
and that has a direct impact on the health in all
Yes.
those people that are targeted in terms of floods,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of, there's a big question around how do we create the health response uh, to
Mm-hmm.
disasters that are going to come more and more frequently. Uh, so there's a big piece there that I would invite you to take a look at because it was very interesting. The conversation they were having was with the ministers of health being educated in terms of climate mitigation and climate adaptation. Because a lot of what we're going to be living, unfortunately, based on the climate situation we're having, is climate adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
So so how do we adapt ourselves in a climate that is going to be much more like this and have moments of heat? So
Yeah.
how that's a very interesting space to
Mm-hmm.
bring together environmental funds.
Mm-hmm.
Also that for you that are looking for funding,
Mm-hmm.
this is a very interesting space to look for climate adaptation funds together with health funds uh, to work with humanity in these issues. So yeah, I see lots of potential. Um, yeah, and I know we are in an unstable time where with wars, with all these
Yeah.
things, with sometimes it feels like crazy
Mm-hmm.
thinking so long term. But I would say instability is gonna be the norm and
Yes,
it's
it
gonna
is.
keep with us. So rather than being scared of what do we do,
Mm-hmm.
uh, actually, that's an interesting space. When COVID hit, many entrepreneurs
Mm-hmm.
that we knew from before
Mm-hmm.
were able to pass on their ideas.
Mm-hmm.
For years, they had been trying to make sure that things were done online, that the transaction costs could be reduced because if you did it online,
Yeah.
and they were all never passed never
Yes.
passed. And then COVID accelerated it.
Yeah.
So, if we look at our current situation with positive eyes, I think we're going to get an acceleration of solutions that would have never been allowed. So,
Hmm.
make sure you're looking into that.
Yeah. Great, great. Yes, I think instability is going to become, I hope not, but is becoming the new norm. And health response in such times is going to be something where some of these solutions, which probably have been at work at a smaller scale, will find acceleration. So I completely agree with you on that, Florencia. Florencia, given the time, we are really coming to the close of the session. Thank you very much for all your wisdom, experiences, lessons, and insights. And we've really learned a lot about some concepts and in depth about how that translates into implementation, execution, different aspects of it, how to make it work. So I'm sure everybody has gained good lessons that they would like to keep with them. But I do have some finale question. Actually, I have a few of them, but I'm going to combine them and ask you, what will be that last thought that you would like to leave with our entrepreneurs who are trying to work to improve health systems, entrepreneurs who are trying to improve health systems? So if you have one key thought for them, what will it be? And the other is that given this challenging time, what inspires you, what drives you to keep pushing this agenda of entrepreneurship? Both. I'm just putting it on your document
Lots of things for the last minute.
now.
Uh, well, first, what I keep having, I mean, one way to think of it is all of our structures are going to fall apart and we're going to be completely dismantled, and then we have to start from scratch. That would mean all of us are entrepreneurs. That's not the reality. The reality is we have an established system, a
Mm,
public system, corporations, organizations. So I believe in entrepreneurship forever in my life because
mm.
I think it's like a house. You
Yes.
recycle your house, you reform your house, right? You don't just
Mm.
destroy it. Well, few
Yes.
houses may be destroyed when you can't do anything about them.
Yes.
So, by definition, we're all going to be entrepreneurs in this system.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? The more this system is falling apart, we're all entrepreneurs finding the way through creative ways to do it differently. So
Mm.
that's my belief forever. Now, in the health system, I think rather than looking at what is the thing that needs to be done externally, look at what moves you. That is my thing. Like, find what moves you. Something in your context close to you, from your work, what you're doing, that you see a window of opportunity.
Mm.
Start there. Don't overcomplicate, complicate it.
Mm.
Like, just start somewhere with something that you
Mm.
want to try.
Mm.
And finally, I'm feeling like you already made the first step. I was thinking with the other question, just signing up for this course.
Mm.
So, this is the first thing. So, make good use of it and make sure that by the end of it, you have something much more clear that you want to bring into the world. And you have a community because now you've had others in this journey.
Yes.
So, yeah, just felt reflecting, you already have a first step here.
Yes. And what keeps you going?
What, sorry?
What keeps you going? What keeps you inspired and going?
Well, I have come to a conclusion that I love life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're all given the chance to be alive for a small period of time in these bodies. So just when just being alive, and to be alive, I need to be passionate about the things that I do. It's like the biggest expression of life for me. So it's not about having comfort all the time. It's not about being relaxed all the time.
Yes.
Because sometimes we think of that as the perfect life.
Yes.
But the perfect life is one where your eyes shine.
Yeah. I'm
And
going to
that's where
remember
that
this.
keeps me going is that.
Is the shiny eyes.
Yeah,
But
just find reasons to make my eyes shine. If not, I will just go and sleep. So yeah. Yeah, so that's it. Just keep these shiny eyes. It doesn't mean it's the most relaxed space.
thank you very much, Florencia. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for all this and some of these very fundamental definitions that you're leaving behind, and some of those next steps that you're leaving behind. I'm sure it's going to benefit all the learners who've viewed or who will view the recording. So thank you for being with us, and we wish you all the very best for your continued success in building this space of entrepreneurship and keeping it ever evolving.
Bye bye and good luck for everyone. And thank you for being today with us.
And thank you, everyone, for watching us live and participating in the discussion forum. We are very excited to start this new season, and we are enjoying reading through your comments. We will recommend that you also engage with your peers when you are, posting your comments. Please read your peers' comments and also try to engage and inquire with them if you have, or exchange something that you want to do, you want to explore. And before we sign off, an important reminder for next week. Next week, we have the second live webinar, which is scheduled for 23rd of April at 11 a.m. with Javier Lozano, who is the co-founder and CEO of Clínicas del Azúcar, an organization reshaping access to affordable diabetes care. So please block your time. And if you have questions for him, you can drop that in when we open up the next module. You can keep dropping that in the discussion forum of the live webinar. And also, if you have not completed your profiles, please make sure that you complete your profiles, especially where you're working, which is your location, some of the themes of interest, because these are things that will help you make connection with your peers more easily. So do those, and we'll continue talking to you on the discussion forum. Thank you everyone for joining us. Bye for now and have great of the rest of the day and weekend. Thank you, Florencia.